All right, and welcome to the Pack the Rock podcast. Football season is officially here. I'm Liv Clements here with Will, Ava, and Nick, and we're just going to get right into it. Let's look a little bit into the last season just to give a quick preview. I know we're 2 games in, but looking at last season compared to now, what are the main changes you guys already see? Is it improvement? Is it kind of like, are we still nervous, though, the rest of the season?
I don't know if nervous is the word I would use. I would say it's just doubtful at the moment because obviously the caliber of opponent we've seen Indiana play is not to the highest that it will definitely be on the season. Thankfully, they're going to go to UCLA this weekend. We can see them actually play a Big Ten opponent, Power 4 team, Or can I say Power 5, not the Pac-12's back? I don't know.
I feel like...
No, you still got to wait a year.
Yeah.
I got to wait a year? Okay, Power 4 team in UCLA. But... from the things that they've done, they look so coherent, and the way that the aggression that they've played with, it gives me confidence in that team, but I definitely wouldn't say that I'm worried about them. It's just hesitance.
Okay, that's fair.
Given the history of Indiana football, I don't necessarily blame you, but I want to flash back to last year, 2023, Indiana against Akron in Bloomington. They went to 4 overtimes and should have lost that game because Akron missed an 18-yard field goal at the end of regulation. Akron was not good last year.
No.
And the fact that they went toe-to-toe with Indiana says a lot about what the ceiling of that team was under Tom Allen. To run up 77 points on Western Illinois, I know Western Illinois is bad. They haven't won a game since we were all in high school, I think.
Correct.
And
right.
You look at the caliber that they are. I think they're a little bit worse than Akron. But the fact that Indiana was so dominant throughout that entire game, I think says a lot about how much more talent is on this team and how much better coached they are. That they really stayed on the ground for most of that game. And yeah, they had some big plays through the air. They had some splash plays. But overall, I think they dominated that game start to finish. And I think that's why a lot of people are high on Indiana going into UCLA because of the ways that they've won their first 2 games.
So when they talk about that these 2 games were kind of cop-outs, they were just, okay, easy wins for IU, but when you get to the real Big Ten conference, they're not ready. Is that, like you kind of said, Nick, I feel like still beating them in that dominance still, like, says something, right? Like, it's not just some cop-out game.
Well, yeah, it's not a fluke because, especially FIU, they scored like 50 points on Central Michigan last week. I don't think FIU is a bad team.
Not
I think
all.
that Indiana really dominated that game defensively. I mean, even when the offense, Coach Signetti said it, was a little bit sloppy, and he said they needed to learn how to play better with the lead. I think the defense was ridiculously dominant. Aiden Fisher's a beast at the linebacker position. Some of the guys they have up front. I mean, Indiana's allowing an average of 5 points per game right now. I don't think that's a fluke because, remember, defense travels probably the best out of any unit on a football team.
Yeah, by far. I mean, they have the 3rd best statistic defense in the country right now, and that's not a fluke. I mean, like you said, Nick, defense travels, and from team to team, conference to conference, it doesn't matter. The way that defense is flying around is kind of otherworldly right now. I mean, Aiden Fisher's got them running like a defense I've really never seen in college right now. So I think Indiana's defense is definitely what's going to keep them afloat, if anything, right now.
So you mentioned the defense with Aiden Fisher as him, like, kind of leading this team, almost like Aaron Casey did last season. I feel like he was, like, the main name, and I have Aiden Fisher. But then going to the offensive side with Curtis Rourke. So everyone's liked what they've seen from him. But then last game, people saw a little taste of Taven, and now everyone's like, oh, okay, wait, is Taven actually good enough to maybe be in that position? I want to know what you guys think. Should it be a QB battle like last season, or should IU just stick to Curtis?
I think IU right now should stick to Curtis and is going to stick to Curtis. I feel like the quarterback carousel from last season was really a letdown a lot, and it was hard for fans just to keep up with. And I feel like it was hard for Indiana. Like, you just never established yourself strongly in that quarterback position. Now, do I think we could see Taven again? Sure. Possibly.
Okay.
But I feel like it's going to be Curtis Rourke, and that's a pretty strong spot.
Yeah, you look at Curtis and what he's done so far. I mean, he had some big throws against Western Illinois, but against FIU, I mean, really, he made the plays that had to be made and just kind of managed the game when he had to. And Rourke is much more experienced than Taven is at the college level. That's no secret. He was the MAC Player of the Year in 2022 offensively. And I think that's what Indiana needs right now. I think Rourke, he's a 6th-year senior. He's basically a dinosaur. He's seen a lot in college football, and I think that's a huge advantage. Now, being from Cathedral, I've seen Taven Jackson play, and I've seen him carve up defenses in the past. He has a ton of talent, and I think Indiana fans should feel good about going into next season. If they don't land Julian Lewis, Taven comes back. That's a bona fide starter just waiting in the wings. I think it's good to have that on your bench because, football is a game where injuries happen. But I don't think Taven's in the QB1 conversation right now.
No, I mean, he just isn't. He's a young guy right now. He's still got 2 years of eligibility left, and he's learning. I mean, we saw that last year. He is clearly still learning this offense. Obviously, he looked amazing against Western Illinois. He had a huge touchdown pass, and he had a couple great looks here and there. He scrambled well. He had a great pocket presence, really, compared to what we saw last year, but I don't think he's ready yet. He's still too young. I mean, we just haven't seen enough either, to be fair. But compared to last year in the carousel, I don't think Taven's going to be ready. But, yeah, that carousel thing, that doesn't help anybody. That messes with fans' mentals, the team's mentals, gives false hope to the fans. The players are like, am I even going to start this week? Which is just killer for anybody on a football field, or in any sport, to be honest. But for football especially, because it's like, I should be established at this point. Except I'm still competing with this dude behind me who you're going to think is worse than you, and it's just horrible all around.
So if you're in Taven's shoes, I know it's early, but let's say the season ends up with Rourke really being the quarterback for the rest of the season. Do you stay another year hoping you're QB1 next season, or do you hit the road and go find something different?
No, I think you got to stay at this point. I mean, he's learning the offense that's going to be there next year. This coaching staff will be here. He's not going to have to learn a new offense it'll be a fourth offense. Now. Yeah.
Oof.
I had to count that on my fingers, so that tells you something. And that'd be a fourth offense in 4 years. He's not going to want to do that. Nobody wants to do that. So I don't think Taven even toys with the idea of leaving, especially when he's the younger brother of Trace Jackson, who is this prodigal son of Indiana at this moment in time. So, I mean, he's going to get the treatment that he might deserve at this point. And if he plays well enough next season, I think he'll definitely be someone to watch.
So when we look at the offense going into it, when we go to Western Illinois, I want to hit on that game specifically. When you guys saw how they did the plays with bringing everyone in and seeing the new faces on the field, did you like kind of how Cignetti did that with letting everyone touch the floor? Or do you feel like going into the UCLA game, we need to have like a solid wide receiver group and a solid running back group?
I think no matter who Indiana has on the field, especially wide receiver-wise, they're going to be okay.
Okay.
This is one of the deepest wide receiver rooms in the conference. Omar Cooper is phenomenal. Elijah Surratt had a phenomenal game last week. He did nothing against FIU, and it didn't really even matter. That was because of a great ground game as well, and that's the thing. Indiana's got 3 running backs who you can reliably count on. Kalen Black, Tyson Lawton, Justice Ellison. They're all great, and that's the good thing about having depth, is that you can go to any of those guys, and they'll be okay. I think wide receiver-wise, obviously Cooper and Surratt are at the top right now, especially with Donovan McCulley still kind of being an unknown heading into this weekend. But if you have 2 or 3 guys you can throw to, Miles Price is great as well. I think you're going to be okay.
And I think interesting, something Cignetti said in press conference was they asked, how do you feel about Donovan McCulley out? And he kind of said, it's next man up. We got to keep going. So is it as big of a loss for IU that Donovan McCulley's out? Or is it really like, we're going to keep going? Because the transfers that came in also from JMU were just so thick too this season.
I mean, I think that it sucks in a way to not have Donovan McCulley out there. I think that he's a really talented player, and I think that it's something that would really benefit this team. But like Nick said, I mean, they have the ability to do next man up and do it well. Everybody is just so well-rounded and developed and has a sort of attack to them that I don't think it's something they worry about too much.
Yeah, with this team's mentality, I don't think that they're even worried if anybody goes down. Doesn't matter. I mean, even if Rourke went down, I feel like they'd be like, yeah, it's Taven's up, or whoever's next man up is up, because that's just how focused that this team is. It's business each and every day, it seems like, with this program, and it's refreshing to see. I need to say that. It's a great thing to see how focused this team is. But if anybody goes down, I don't think Cignetti or the players are going to worry about it because they know they can trust their next guy, whoever that second stringer is.
So knock on wood, though, no one gets hurt going into this UCLA game because I know IU needs to be on it. First away game of the season, going all the way across the country. And they've never played this team before. Neither have ever faced each other. Is that a factor going into this game that neither have faced each other before? Or is it kind of like, that's just how it is. Let's watch film and let's keep it going.
With how college football is now, I mean, basically you're looking at, for a lot of Power 5 schools, an entirely new roster every year. And for Indiana, UCLA having never played each other, I don't really think that matters that much because, I mean, James Madison fans talk about it all the time. This is basically the Indiana Dukes or the JMU Hoosiers. That's really what it is to them. But it just kind of speaks to the turnover in college football and how, Curtis Rourke is one and done at Indiana. So UCLA, it wouldn't do them any good to have a scouting report on him because he's never played, at the Power 5 level prior to this year. So I don't really think it matters that they've never faced each other. I do think, though, that because UCLA doesn't really have an established football fan base, I have a friend who goes to USC, and he says, if you're not a fan of a specific school, you root for USC football and UCLA men's basketball. So there's a chance that the fans actually play a factor in this, and I wonder if maybe UCLA is a little surprised at the amount of Indiana fans there, because as we know, Indiana fans travel very well. That could be a factor to watch.
I was thinking that too. I mean, about the fan thing, it's a distance. Like, I mean, you're going out to the West Coast, it's a distance, but I mean, Indiana fans do travel very well. And so that was like, when I was like getting ready this morning, I was like, I wonder how many people are actually going to be there and how much that influences the game.
And we've talked about a lot of the good things when it comes to IU. We've seen these past two games, Western Illinois, FIU. But what are some things you see need to get tweaked for this UCLA game? Is there something specific that you guys look at like, okay, that's something that you need to clean up? Or is it really just play how they've been playing?
I wouldn't say there's a specific aspect of the team right now that needs to be focused or changed upon. It's just they have to stay focused. They have to stay aggressive for 4 quarters like Cignetti has kind of preached after every game so far. It's one drive. It's the end of the first half, actually, for both games so far, where they just let up on defense for some reason. It's the weirdest thing ever. They get complacent for all of one drive. And they love to use that word complacent. I don't know why, but it fits. But I wouldn't say there's anything specific they need to fix from any unit. It's just keeping aggressive for the whole 4 quarters and just not settling at really any point in that game.
I think if they do sort of let off the gas at the end of the half, FIU did score a touchdown off of that.
Right.
But it's different on the road because on the road, momentum can shift faster against you, at least traditionally speaking. So hypothetically, let's say Indiana receives the ball to start the game. UCLA has it to end the first half. They score a touchdown because the defense lets up. Then they double dip and they score to start the third quarter. That's a 14-point swing, all because of something that we know is a problem, that the defense, like you said, just kind of lets off the gas. Don't know why, but I do think it's sometimes easy to kind of think, this game's in hand. You take a play off, give up a 35-yard pass down the middle of the field, and all of a sudden it's panic time. But if they stay focused, and I think that's probably been a focal point this week, about staying focused through the end of the half, I think that they shouldn't have a problem with that this weekend.
And when I looked at UCLA, it was interesting because they're coming off already from a bye week. So they kind of went against Hawaii and got to see how they played. And in that, they had 2 turnovers, rushed the ball only 71 yards. So they already know what they need to fix. So I think it'll be interesting to see what IU really hits on, because I think with Cignetti, his big thing, that first game was penalties. And then you saw in that next game, they went from 9 to 2. So they're already making those changes in practices, which gives the Hoosier fans hope. But when it comes to UCLA and IU, who has more on the line? Is it UCLA going to their first Big Ten game and this is a big thing for them? Or is it IU needs to win this game to show that, yes, we actually are, IU again? Who has more on the line?
It's Indiana for sure. And I don't know if IU again is the phrase I'd use, but we're the Hoosiers.
You gotta give it some hope.
I don't know if there was ever a before where they can say again. I mean,
okay, fair.
They can show us a new era. I mean, that's what Kamara talked about on Tuesday. He's like, we want to show we're a legit team. And they can do that this week against UCLA. It's the first Power 4 matchup they're going to have all season. And they're the second highest ranked team in PFF right now. So if they can keep up those grades and keep up the high quality of play, they can really show people that it's actually a team to be afraid of for once.
Yeah, and you think about what Curt Cignetti said at Media Days a couple months ago, basically saying that the Rose Bowl's a dusty old stadium, it's a business trip, and that's been the mantra he's been preaching really ever since. He's been talking a lot about, I win, Google me. If he loses against UCLA, people are going to go back to those things that he said and say, are you, you're not so high now, are you, big guy? And that's something that people are going to pile on him for. And I think you're going to see the consequences of that if Indiana loses. What percentage of the student section leaves at halftime? It's probably 70%.
Right.
If Indiana loses in prime time on NBC, standalone game, that's what the students and that's what a large chunk of the fan base is going to see, that, this is the same old Indiana. They can't beat real teams. So yeah, I think Indiana has way more on the line. And conversely, if Indiana wins, then Curt Cignetti can say, okay, the business was taken care of, just like I said it would be back in Indianapolis in the middle of July. Now let's go on to Charlotte and then dive into conference play. And from there, you're playing with house money.
And so now the big question is, does IU win? I need game score predictions. IU versus UCLA. Will, do you want to start us off?
I'm going to go 31-17. I think UCLA figures it out on offense and gets in the end zone more than once, like they did last or 2 weeks ago against Hawaii. But I think Indiana's defense is still going to stifle them the same way they've stifled every team that they've played so far. And the offense is clicking right now. I mean, everything is hitting how it's supposed to be. There's gaps in the O-line for the running backs. Receivers are getting hit by Rourke perfectly in stride. So I think Indiana's offense just comes to life again, puts up 31 out there in Pasadena.
There we go.
31-14. 31-14. I really am putting it in on this defense. I really need this defense to hold up. I do. I really do. And I think they will. And I think that Curtis Rourke is going to have a great game himself. And I'm really excited to see what these receivers do. So.
Okay.
I'm thinking of just raw numbers, and I'm trying to figure out how I want to justify it. UCLA barely escaped Hawaii.
Right.
And I know it's week 1, so you can't really judge a whole lot. But they turned the ball over twice in that game, and really it came down to the final play. So I think that they're going to be a very different team because they had some flaws that got exposed, especially with turning the ball over and being productive on offense. And that's where I think Indiana has the advantage because their defense is phenomenal. Really, the front seven has been fantastic. The secondary is disciplined. So after stalling to make a prediction, I'm going to say 24-10 Indiana. I think it's going to be a run-first offense, kind of like we saw against FIU, because Curtis Rourke can throw deep shots to insert wide receiver here against Western Illinois. But I think we're going to see kind of what happened against FIU, where it's run first, and then that opens up the play-action passing game. I think Indiana sort of pulls away late, but 24-10.
Okay. I have 28-21. So I have it pretty close. But I think, like we all said, it's really just going to come down to how the offense and defense plays together. I think if both continue to play how they were in the first 2 games, I think it will be smooth sailing. Work finding every wide receiver he possibly can because every single one of them can catch the ball, cross our fingers. And defense is doing what they need to do. I think showing that they can get 5 sacks in a game last game was huge to go into UCLA. So I think that will be the big one. But look at us all saying IU will win. I think that's good faith. That's good spirits in the air. But this Saturday, UCLA and IU will go against each other at 7:30 Eastern. And we will see you guys then. Pack the Rock podcast with us. We'll see you next week.